Finish. Button.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ثم ما بعد. This is part 2 of الصبر عند موت الطفل والغريب, the patience that it takes at the loss of a child or a loved one. And the verse part we mentioned before, Salat al-Maghrib, the hadith of Zayd bin Harith radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He is the father of Usama bin Zayd. He is the father of Usama. So Usama is called Usama bin Zayd. Usama bin Zayd, because he is the son of Zayd bin Harith radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And we left off with a statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sending the message to his daughter Zainab, where he told her, "Fasbir wa tahtasib," and be patient and seek the reward from Allah. فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ مَا أَخَذَ, because what Allah He took belonged to Him. وَلَهُ مَا أَعْطَى, and what He gave you belonged to Him in the first place. And so this we mentioned again. Ulama of Islam, they mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his statement "Fasbir" means عدم تسقط والجزع عند المصائب, يعني to avoid, to not fall to pieces, or as we say, to bug out when you have a calamity. And this also, the Prophet ﷺ told her, وَتَحْتَسِبْ, نعم, وَتَحْتَسِبْ, to seek the reward. This is an action, يعني تحتسب, يعني doing the action with the intention to be rewarded. Just as the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in the hadith that is famous when it comes to fasting in Ramadan, أخرجه في البخاري, أخرجه في البخاري في صحيحه, in the authentic collection of Ibn Bukhari. It says, "Man sama," whosoever fast. And then the other thing he says, وَمَنْ قَامَ, whoever stands up, meaning praying Salat al-Tarawih, al-Salah al-Tarawih, whoever prays the night prayer in Ramadan. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave 2 conditions for it to be accepted. He said, imanan, yani having iman, imanan, meaning that person is doing it as the action that he believes, that she holds true in her heart, he holds in his heart, the Muslims hold in their heart, that it is from iman to fast. From iman to fast. From iman, meaning from the deen of Allah wa ta'ala. From iman, that it is from righteous deeds. From iman, sifa wa khasla lil mu'mineen min imanihim sidqan fi qulubihim an yasumu, a characteristic, a description, a thing that proves and shows the belief of that person that's claiming belief, the truthfulness of his belief. And that's what we're selling when you talk things that you can do to enter you to the Jannah, at the end of that hadith, he was answering. He said, after he already mentioned Siyam, yani to fast, yani during the month of Ramadan, yani is considered sadaqatin. It's an act of charity. The Prophet ﷺ came back, he said, wasom jundatin. Yani, and fasting on top of that is a shield from the fire. So not only fasting is amal salih, righteous deeds. Not only fasting is as-sabr, patience. It can gain taqwa. Not only that,
App
but
switcher.
also the
Live.
fasting is a shield from the fire.
Comment section.
Meaning if you fast,
App switcher. Settings. Active. Comment section. Finish. Button.
and so that being protected from the fire by your fasting, the Prophet ﷺ gave the condition that it will be accepted and it will act as a shield for the faster from the fire. He said, the iman, that that person doing it has to believe and know that it is something that Allah has legislated. This is iman. You believe in it. You accept it in your heart. Then on top of that, you do it with the frame of mind that it is from iman, meaning from the deen of Allah wa ta'ala, and that it's from righteous deeds. And then the Prophet said, wahtisaban, seeking the reward from Allah. Because people can do actions and not seek the reward from Allah wa ta'ala. And this is the point that many of the ulama made, why the Prophet said fasbir to her, sending a message to her to be patient. And then he said and seek the reward. He could have just said fasbir and left it, but he didn't. He said fasbir, be patient, and seek the reward. Because a person can pray, but if a person is praying with the intention to show others, look, I'm praying, I'm a Muslim, I didn't leave Islam, then of course he's not seeking the reward from Allah. A person could give money, and indeed that charity is something that is from al-iman, from the deen of Allah wa ta'ala. But he can be doing it just so people can say, wow, that man gave all of that money, wow, he's generous. And a person could likewise, wallahu musta'an, hold and restrain from going crazy while they don't seek the reward from Allah wa ta'ala. So the Prophet added, that's it, because this is the most important thing for the believer after belief, that he does the actions as a believer and believing that Allah is going to reward him, then that drives him or her to seek that reward. This is the driving force behind your deeds, seeking the reward. Now, so this, the Prophet ﷺ, the wisdom in him, والسلام, picking those choice words was very monumental to doing any action as well as trying to gain the reward from Allah wa ta'ala. And we said, as many ulama mentioned, from amongst them, Imam Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, Allah shall have mercy upon him, he said, many ulama, when people die, they have sayings. They have sayings to encourage you to be patient. So one might say, A'dam Allahu ajrak. May Allah give you a great reward because you're patient, you're bearing it. Somebody else might say, Hasana imanikum. May Allah make your iman good because y'all holding it, But all those statements are not blameworthy. The best way to tell somebody when someone dies is what you found the Prophet doing, and that is all inclusive of what they try to say as a statement of consolation, a statement of soothing, that is fasbir, patient, wahtasib, and seek the reward from Allah. We said again, the Prophet telling the person to go back and tell Zainab to be patient, because people are not patient when they lose loved ones. We mentioned the hadith of the lady was at the grave wailing. This child is now in the grave. She's at the grave wailing. The Prophet said, Ittaqi Allah wasbiri. Yani fear Allah and be patient to the lady. She told the Prophet, Yani khalini. Leave me alone, get away from me. ابعد عني خليني أنت لا تعرف يعني ما في من الألم. You don't know what's in me of pain. So the Prophet, from this point, scholars talk about, they said the Prophet didn't say, I'm the Messenger of Allah, or I told you to fear Allah, I told you to be patient. He didn't elaborate more, he didn't scold her. That was enough. That she responded like that after he said, Ittaqillah, yani wasbiri, be patient and fear Allah. So he walked away, and this is something that we could take a lesson from. Sometimes it's enough to say something and leave it, not to pile on top like I do. Astaghfirullah. It's a bad character I have.
Finish. Button.
I have to restrain myself and just stop. Say something, leave it. Boss, that's it. You know, Allah guide me and you all. I mean. And then that lady, after the Prophet ﷺ, please bear with me because I'm pretty tired tonight, but this is important. After the Prophet ﷺ left the graveyard, then Abdullah ibn Abbas went to her and said, Yani, Ata'rifi man hada? Do you know who that was? She said, no. He said, Kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was the Messenger of Allah. She was blown away, like, what? So she was so blown away, she said, you know, Dullini ala bayti, show me where he lives. So she went, as we say, to the house of the Prophet, to the bait of the Prophet. She went to his crib, as we say. So she knocked, identified herself, and the Prophet answered, and then she said, I'm Fulanet, and Ana Fulanet, التي كان في قبري بكى على يعني ولدي أو كما قالت. She said, I'm the lady that was at the graveyard crying about the loss of my son. The Prophet ﷺ didn't say, get away from my house. You disrespected me. You ignorant. Prophet ﷺ didn't say, what you want now? Now you want to listen. You don't want to listen then. This is the stuff that we do. Allah got us. Prophet he said, Inna sabra and samtatul ula. He said, patience is when you're quiet and you hold it together in the beginning of the calamity. And if you think about it, the Prophet he said, in another hadith, he said, Man kana yu'minuna billahi. La, that's not the hadith. The other hadith was telling me, he said, من كان يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر من كان يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر whosoever believes in Allah on the last day. من كان يؤمنون بالله, whoever believes in Allah, واليوم الآخر, and the last day, he said, فَلْيَقُولْ خَيْرٌ. فَلْيَقُول. This is a command form in Arabic. Fa means then, to prove your belief in Allah on the last day. The lam is called lam amr. The lam that they use to show what's coming after the lam is the obligation. The Prophet said, قُلْ خَيْرٌ. Say goodness. قُلْ خَيْرٌ. Say goodness. Qul khayr. Speak goodness. Who? Which one? The one that believes in Allah and the last day. Let him speak good. فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرٌ. And then the Prophet said, أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, or let him be silent. This is the same yani samt the Prophet is saying in the sabr and samtatul ula, that patience is when you're quiet. Now imagine, okay, let's take it in context. Samt. Prophet Sallam is saying this word, which could mean be quiet, could also mean don't react, because to be quiet, you have to what? Restrain yourself. You have to control that from the inside. That's an internal struggle, right? Your nafs is saying, cuss that joker out. While your nafs is saying, you gonna let them talk to you like that? Your nafs is saying, you know what? You gotta establish the haqq. You know, quote some ayat on all of these things. You know, don't let her have the last word. You a man. You ain't no man. All of that. Your nafs. You know, he talking crazy. I'm gonna punch him in his mouth. All of that. Your nafs is telling you. You gotta control. If she say one more thing, I'm gonna smack her down. Your nafs inside. You fighting from inside. That's what I'm telling him. He said, in Allah tajawaza, that in Allah means verily Allah, he's going to do something, or he did it, to emphasize that this thing is great. Then the emphasis comes before the one who's doing the action, which is Allah. In Allah, Allah verily tajawaza means you give somebody a pass. Like they say, jawaz a suffer. Jawaz mean pass. A suffer, to travel. So jawaz a suffer in Arabic means your passport, the thing that allows you to pass from border to border, state to state, country to country. That word the Prophet is using in this hadith, yani in Allah, the ta in the beginning of jawaz, tajawaza, is an action being done. In Allah, tajawaza, Allah is passing, pardoning, letting go, overlooking, giving a break on ummati, my nation, the Muslims. Then the Prophet tells you the condition. ما تتحدث لنفسه, that which a person's inside their nafs, their soul speaks to. So the Prophet is talking about an internal struggle here. In Allah tajawaza an ummati, Allah has gave a pass, overlooked, forgiven. Everybody who's a Muslim. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, ما تتكلم به يعني أنفس, that which his inner soul speaks to himself. So if you have something inside of you that's speaking to you, we say, man, I was talking to myself. But sometimes we do that out loud. But if you hold it, but inside your nafs is suggesting, do this, do that, do that. You have all of this stuff. Your soul speaks to you. Nobody else can hear but you and Allah. Then the Prophet he said, when that happens, yani ما لا يعني تتكلم أو يعني تعمل يعني به أو كما قال. So as long as the person doesn't speak, verbalize what his soul told him, nor does he act on it. So you can say stuff to yourself, have a conversation to yourself inwardly, but as long as you don't vocalize it or act on it, Allah already pardoned you. Tatajawaza an ummati. The Prophet said he already pardoned, gave a pass to my ummah. So you see, this is like a conditional phrase, and this is similar to the Prophet saying, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawm al-akhir, and whoso believes in Allah on the last day." Then the Prophet said, "Falyaqul khayr." Let him speak good. Then let him speak good. What? On the basis that he believes really in Allah on the last day. Then let him do this action to prove it. Falyaqul. That was a pronunciation mistake because I'm tired. فَلْيَقُولْ خَيْرٌ. I mixed the letter. I said the kha with the place of the qaf. فَلْيَقُولْ خَيْرٌ. And then the Prophet said, let him speak good. أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, or let him remain without speaking. The other one, the Prophet said, only yaskut, let him shut up. So one, he's talking already. The Prophet said, if he believes in Allah on the last day, let him shut his trap. Stop speaking. You already went too far. Let him shut up. And that's, people are like, damn, he said shut up. That's harsh. The Prophet said, yani, only yaskut, yani, let him stop talking. That means he's already talking. Ghiba, backbiting, namima, keltiering, Buhtan, slander, Tu'un, defamation, Kadab, lying. Ali Yasma, Akhi Uskut, brother, shut up. You believe in Allah on the last day, Akhi, stop it. Nabi Sallallahu said in the other word, Ali Yasmut, let him remain silent. That's the wise one, huh? He's not talking, he's remaining silent. Don't you hear me talking to you? Say something. Well, don't you know I'm trying to practice the hadith? That's why I'm not saying something. Because what my nafs is telling me, I'm going to be in trouble if I say it. And you pushing buttons. The point, the Prophet used the same word in the sabara and the samtal ula. Patience is when you're quiet in the beginning, when you know well in the beginning, when you hold it together, when the calamity first starts. Your son died, you hold it together. Upon hearing the news, at the janazas, at the grave, and there's a debate: should women go to the grave or not? That's 4 different positions, at least that I know on this issue. Really? Some scholars said haram. لا يجوز للنساء حضور ماذا المقبرة. It is not permissible for the women to يحضرنا البرزات أو يعني القبور, to visit the grave. Then you have the ulama saying that it is يعني makruha, أنه makruha, karahatan, dislike, but it's not haram. Then you have some saying يعني ماذا بارك الله فيكم أنه يعني منسوخ, it's abrogated. The Prophet abolished that, so it's okay. And then you have some saying ماذا and then you have some saying Allah sallallahu alaihi Muhammad permissible, that it's permissible to go. You're Jews. So you have prohibited, number 1. Number 2, dislike. Number 3, abrogated. And number 4, permissible for the women. This I'm bringing up in context of Yani, the lady who was at the grave wailing because her son died. And the Prophet said, Ittaqillah wasbir, be patient, fear Allah. And then she said, leave me alone, get away from you, know what I'm feeling. And Allah ibn Abbas, the Prophet left. He said to Allah ibn Abbas, do you know who that was? It was a messenger. She went to the Prophet's house and she wanted to apologize. And the Prophet didn't scold her, didn't say, I didn't accept your apology. He just told her the lesson, what he was trying to tell her. He gave her now the tafsir. Why he told her that false spirit, because you're blowing not only the patient but the reward. That which he told his own daughter in the other hadith, yani false spirit, yani what tahtasib, yani be patient and seek the reward. So if you don't seek the reward and you're not patient, or you're patient and you don't seek the reward, you lose a great thing by not doing both. So Rasulullah told that lady who was at the grave wailing over her child, after fear of Allah, be patient. He told her when she came to his house to apologize, inna sabara anda samtatul ula. Now that patience is when you're quiet in context, holding it together, because in order to be quiet when you want to grieve and cry, that's holding it together. That is a sabr. You're holding yourself, restraining yourself from something that you want to do that's going to give you relief, that's going to make you happy, but it might not be the best thing to do. That joy may cost you a great sin, a decreasement in iman, and maybe ultimately the fire. Hold it. Fasbir. Be patient. وَتَحْتَسِبْ. And seek the reward from Allah Ta'ala. And Allah la yadi'u ajr al-muhsinin, because Allah will not allow the one who strives, and that's a high level of striving. This is muhsin, the top of the list action, when you control yourself in those situations. So Allah said He won't allow the one who excels as a good doer, his reward to be lost. No matter how difficult it is, it's worth it. Surah of Salam, the point we went back to the daughter Zainab. This is why the ulama said he told her, be patient, because the Prophet doesn't want her to do two things. Tasaqqati, not to fall, to be from the word saqata, to fall. So they said the saqqati, the action of falling what? To pieces. Because when you fall, if you're glass, you may shatter. If you're some type of breakable substance, you may crack, hard plastic. So imagine your soul, your spirit, your iman, your emotions, they fall. Almost time. You won't be very strong. And you won't be able to seek any reward from Allah Ta'ala. So that's why they said the Prophet, when he told her that, he meant for her not to tasaqqati, not to fall to pieces, with jaza. Jaza just means you lose it. Don't do that. And then the Prophet said, فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ مَا أَخَذْ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. To Allah belongs all that's in the heavens and on earth. Alam yakun abna fulan or fulanat, ma fil ard is not that which is possessions of men and women. These people, so and such and such, their children are not there included in the ayat, the context of what's on earth. Of course, it belongs to Allah. Kullu shay biyadillah wa kullu shay mamlukin lillah. Everything is in His hands. He controls it, and everything Allah Azza wa Jalla He owns. That's why they said, if a person does some bad, la yadur Allah shay, it doesn't hurt Allah. And if a person does some good, la yanqus min mulkihi shay, and if somebody does a good action, it doesn't take from Allah's kingdom. Because He owns it. You can't take something from Allah Ta'ala by doing bad. It doesn't decrease Him. By doing good, it doesn't diminish Him. Even the Prophet, he said, Allah Ta'ala said, لو كان كل بني آدم في واضح ويدعوني وأعطى كل منهم ما أعطى لا ينقص من ملك شيئا كما قال. If all of the people were in one place, just imagine the whole world stood up. Now all of them ask Allah, Allah, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that, like the people should say at Christmas time. Write your Christmas list. 25 things. Santa, I want this. Number 1. Santa, I want that. Number 2. Santa, I want. Number 3. People go on Hajj. Brother said, make dua for me. He said, okay, I'm going to make dua for you. He said, I'm going to, I have just a few things. I'll let you know tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, he gives you a list 1 through 49. I want a house that's better than this. Number 2, I want a virgin wife. Number 3, ask Allah to bless me to finish my PhD. He has a list. He expects you to go and you at the Kaaba and say, oh Allah, give the brother number 1, 2 to 49. And then he pulls out more papers from his, ihram. People gave him Hajj lists. Imagine the whole world stand and ask Allah, and Allah give each one of them what they want. If that's us, at some point we're going to be depleted. So even if it's not depleted, it's going to decrease what we have. But Allah, la yanqus min mulkihi shay'an. Nothing will decrease His dominion. SubhanAllah. Amazing. لأن الله سبحانه وتعالى هو الغني ونحن مع فقراء, because Allah is the one who owns everything. He's rich and no need of us, and we are the one don't have anything without Him, and we're sure in need of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, وهو القوي ونحن ضعفاء, and He's infinitely strong, never weak, while we are the ones that are weak by default. Human beings are weak. And we have indeed created human being by default in a state of weakness. Well, Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned fil kabit, which were created in trial, and difficulty, and struggle. So that's the human being. The point being is, when the Prophet told her those two pieces of advice, whatever Allah took belonged to Him, and what He gave was His in the first place. And He said, "Kullu shay andahu yani li'ajli musamma." And everything that's with Him expires, has a point of return. And this is something that Allah we have to keep in mind, because it would help a person to do the first two things He said: be patient and seek the reward. It will help you to keep in context that Tabarak wa Ta'ala took that person, that's the way it goes, but something else is behind it. It's not that Allah is being mean. And that perhaps Allah will give you something better than what He took. Now, so this, we mentioned before, and we mentioned the correction that the Prophet did not send the child to the baby. We mentioned again that you go and read the long hadith, not a short version, and you go and listen to the explanation of Imam al-Nawawi, his Manhaj al-Muslim fi Sahih, Muslim is hadith collected, that's called Sahih Muslim. Then you'll find Imam al-Nawawi explaining that she sent that message to the Prophet 3 times. The first one, the Prophet, he was busy. So, and he understood me going is not going to be the same result as her being patient, seeking the reward with Allah Ta'ala. Suppose the Prophet went and she wasn't patient. Suppose the Prophet went and she didn't seek the reward. But him sending that ahead of time is the best thing for mankind. The second thing, the ulama, they said on the 3rd time, she swore to the Prophet that he must come. And this, they said, when a person halaf al-yamin, wajib, and yujibahu, wajib, and al-wafa, bil-ahd. You have to fulfill the promise or the command, or if they're calling you go, when they say, Ba'Allah, you have to come now. It's like, you better come now. I'm threatening you with Allah. So Salam went on the 3rd time, but prior he was busy, and this shows you the putting things in their proper place. If someone is preoccupied, no doubt those people that are first have the most right to you. But in an extreme case like this, it's permissible to break it. And one of the ways for it to be broken, if someone threatens you by Allah, then you break. Or if it's your own child, for example. Remember we're in Yemen, and we learned 2 great things in this same context. One brother, I won't mention his name because of respect, love, and honor, and he probably wouldn't like it, but there was a story where one brother, he had a son. One of the brothers who were American, he was married to a Yemeni. Studious brother, mashallah. I benefit a lot from him. He's from the States. And his baby was sick. Kids will catch what's called meningitis a lot in that part of the world, and it attacks the brain and kills them. And so the baby was sick for a few days, temperature running very hot. They're trying to break the fever. And finally it broke, but then it came back. And so the wife said, look, the baby is sick. We need to take him to the hospital. He said, listen, I got dars. Sahih Bukhari, Fatah al-Bari, the explanation of Bukhari is after Salat al-Asr. I'm not missing that dars. I'll be back and then we'll go. Went to the dars. We walk maybe 15 minutes from one side of the village to the other side where the markets of Shaykh Mukbil was at, rahimahullah ta'ala. And you pray Asr, and then there's no sunnahs after Asr, and then you sit, you have the dars, 20 minutes, 18 minutes, 25 minutes the most, and then the Shaykh says, ila huna, we'll stop at this point. Or he says, Yani, barakallahu fikum, Allah bless you. And that means the class is over, he closes his book. By the time the brother got back, and it's normally like an hour and a half before Maghrib, after that dars of Asr, the baby had died. They rushed him to the hospital, but it was of no use, they couldn't bring him back because the fever made him go into shock and he died. Another occasion, Shaykh al-Yahya was in the dars teaching. One of his children was very sick, and the wife sent for him, and the baby was critical, close to, I believe, dying. And when the Shaykh got the news that the baby became very fatal, the Shaykh stopped the dars immediately, closed the book, and said, ila huna, that's it, and left. And they took that baby to the hospital, and I think that baby lived and then died or something. But the point is, you see how the Shaykh handled that. Because he's an alim. And she may have said, tell him I said, come by Allah. Because she was an alimat. His daughter, not the Sheikh's daughter, astaghfirullah. That was his wife was an alimat. Shaikh, who was the previous wife of Shaykh Mukbil, the Wadi'i from the Maji people, and she married Shaykh Yahya after the period of mourning for the death of her husband. Now, so you see that this is real life, Don't be deceived. Yeah, the Prophet was dealing with something, like the brother was dealing with something, he wanted to go to dars. But you see, the urgency of going when someone calls you, when you're dealing with children or someone who's close. Hey, then we said the Prophet, he went to Zainab's house with all of those top head Sahaba. Sa'd ibn Ubadah, which was the head of the Khazraj. Now, he was the head of the tribe, the great tribe, Ansar Khazraj. And when the Prophet seen the baby fighting for his last breath in his body, when the soul was coming out, the body would quiver or shake. Then the Prophet, he cried. And the ulama, they clarified, they said, Baka, yani, the Sabi. He cried because the Sabi is the small baby. And Sabi means the baby wasn't in puberty. Sabi means it can be a toddler, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the term Sabi they use. And so the baby died, and Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Mahada ya Rasulullah, yani, Mada yani baka, what is this crying? This, and the Prophet said, Hada Rahma, Yuti Allah min ibadihi ma yasha. This is mercy that Allah, in one narration, ma yuti Allah fi qulubi ibadihi. This is the mercy that Allah gives to whom He pleases. This is the mercy that Allah pleases in the heart of any of His servants that He wishes. And then the Prophet said that person, Ruhamah Allah, Allah will show him much more mercy than that. So this hadith, we mentioned this, the dars before, Salat al-Maghrib, and we'll mention some points. One of them we said that it shows you when someone threatens you with Allah, you have to answer. That's what they said. When a person threatens you, you better pay my money, I swear by Allah. You better fear Allah. By Allah, I tell you to stop. The one who has taqwa, khalas. So, but it also showed the Prophet was preoccupied with something, and he understood to send her, that great advice which he did in the beginning. 3 more points and we'll stop. Another point, they said that this statement that the Prophet sent to her, or this advice, is called ta'azi. Ta'azi. Ta'azi is when you, we will say in English, try to console the one who is the family of the deceased. So ta'azi is something that is part of the religion. And it also includes what we would say in English, eulogy. But the difference between the Islamic eulogy and the other types of eulogy, when the person is not in the ground, you'll find people talking the good things about him or what they remember about her. And this is to not only be in respect of the deceased, but those family, close members that are there. What do you think is going to do for them hearing somebody talk about their loved one who left like that? It's going to make them feel comfort. It's going to make them remember the good things and not, he's gone from us, she's gone from us. You know, it's a type of soothing for the people of the deceased. Likewise, Islamically, it shouldn't be done like that while the body is not in the ground. Shouldn't have the deceased here, and then before we pray, I'm talking about his virtues, 15, 20 minutes, half hour, or we prayed and he's talking about the person, how great he was. No. The Prophet prohibit us to hold the person who died up. He said, because if he was a bad person, you get him off your hands, your shoulders. If he was good, you're rushing him to his reward. But there are some modern day people of knowledge that said, if it's a need to explain something, say for example, you have Muslims that don't know about janais, or the non-Muslims don't know anything about the Muslims, the religion, the loved one that was a Muslim didn't say or do much. They don't, understand what's going on. So you might have to instruct them and then say a few words about the deceased in light of how he or she was a good Muslim and so forth to them. But normally, you don't do the eulogy or the consoling the people of the deceased while the body is up from the ground. You do it once the body is in the ground and buried. And this is permissible even if at the graveyard. I remember one time we were back home in St. Louis, and the Shaikh was Palestinian, but he loved the Sunnah. Wallahi, he wouldn't go to no masjid of his people. He wanted to pray Jummah, the masjid of the Sunnah, the people of the Sunnah. MashaAllah. And he said, when I die, I want that man to bury me and pray over me. Nobody else. The brother who was the imam of the Sunnah, white, Caucasian brother. And so he had a heart operation, and then he died sometime after that due to the complications. But he still recovered, came out, he was in the masjid. And so that brother, because he was so known, he was from one of the biggest families of the Palestinians in St. Louis. When the janazah was over, went to the grave, the guy who took over was the Palestinian. He couldn't do it at the masjid for the janazah because it was in the wasiyah, the will, who should wash the body, who should pray over him, who should this, that. But at the graveyard, they tried to take over, these are our people, we're going to have something to say. So the guy started...
Comment section. Abu Dawud is watching.
Eulogizing it. Going in. So I let him talk for about maybe 30 seconds. I let him talk for about 30 seconds, excuse me. And then I just in a loud voice in Arabic, I told him Barakallahu fikum. لا يجوز تعزية لمade فوق التراب. It says it's not permissible to eulogize the deceased while he's not in the ground. The ahsan li ajrihi wa tiba sunnati Rasulullah sallam. This is better for his reward, and it's closer and of the sunnah. They stopped everything immediately, put him in the ground, and the brothers thanked me afterwards. And it's not trying to say I did this, I did that, but I'm giving you an example how customarily Muslims, sometime from their culture, they try to do that eulogization before the body goes in the grave. And it's not that the ta'zim to console and to praise and eulogize and comfort the people who's from the family of the deceased, nor to talk good about the deceased is un-Islamic or bad. No, the problem is you do it before the body is placed in the ground. That's the point. It should be done after you place them in the ground. Because the Prophet used to do it after the person was placed in the ground. Talk about him, how his thing was, and remind the people of Allah like this. So this is the point in the hadith that this is a thing of Islam to do ta'zih, to console the close people of the family from amongst the deceased. The second point is, Shaykh Uthaymeen said, this ta'zih is something to make the family of the deceased strong. Is to uplift them, to comfort them. He said, and it's not to be done for those people who are close exclusively. He said, because you may find some people who are close relatives, when the person died, they're not close with that person, although they're close relatives. So that person, you can't see and imagine that person having some joy and saying something good about the one who died, because they had beef while that person was alive. But by the same token, Shaykh Uthaymeen said, but there could be some people that's far away, or they distant relatives, or they're very close friends, but they weren't in that person's life for a while, and when they hear that that person died, then those people, they're the ones who grieving over the loss of that person. So the ta'ziyah, the thing where you try to console the family members of the deceased or close friends or relatives, is to comfort them. And it's general. It's not exclusive to those who the immediate family, those who close relatives, then everybody else, khalas, don't worry about comforting and consoling them because they're not the close relatives. They shouldn't be grieving. They won't be grieving. No, it's general. So it includes those who, the close relatives, the immediate relatives, distant relatives, friends, like this. It's to be given, for those people because they're feeling the calamity, the loss of the loved one. Someone who sometimes you have a beef before you die. If you don't settle it, that person might not care if you die or not. Might not be a calamity for that person based on the conflict that you had with that person while they were alive. But people who didn't have a conflict, they're going to grieve. So the statement, be patient, seek the reward, the ulama said this was a type of ta'zih to console the one who was tested with the loss of their loved one, which was Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet, who lost her son. It said, likewise, they switched the issue of ta'zih in this day and time. And Shaykh Uthaymeen is talking about the Muslims. Because it used to be to console the relatives of the deceased person, but now they make it just for the close relatives. And what they do, they like have a chair. Imagine like the person died. Then they have all of these tents set up outside. They bring a bunch of food, a bunch of different sweets, drinks, and then like in Yemen, they chew that pot, that leaf that's almost like the coca plant, so they pass that around and chew like it's, hospitality, but really, some ulama said that's a narcotic. So imagine, like in our culture, when we do the, when the person died, they have what they call the Passover. They might not have no beer and stuff up there in the church, but if you was outside, you had tents and stuff. Some people gonna have some beer, some people gonna have some liquor, somebody might have some reefer, because the idea is to comfort the people who have been afflicted by the loss of a loved one. So that's where the idea comes, to have some food, cheer up, you can eat, you hug people you ain't seen in a long time. So the Muslims have that in our deen, but they change how it's done. They made it a party, basically. And it's only for the close relatives. But really, it should be for anybody that's close to the deceased, or from those people who are suffering that calamity, close for our friends and like this. Also, Shaykh mentioned, the issue of making food for the family of the deceased. That part of the sunnah, again, is to console the people who are the family of the deceased. So imagine a lady loses her husband, a man loses his wife, a couple loses their kids. Well, they're not going to be ready to cook no meal. They're depressed, but they still got to eat, right? So from the sunnah is somebody will make food and take food to those people so they can have food in the house for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, whatever. But again, look, we changed it. When somebody died, what they do? They make food, bring it to the masjid, and feed everybody. Now, the deceased people may come to the masjid because they made it a custom. So amongst the people eating in commemoration of that person is some people from the family. But all the people in the masjid that's not the family member, they eating the food too. So guess what? Once we leave the masjid tonight, them people still gotta worry about what they gonna cook, how they gonna cook. So the purpose of making that food for the family of the deceased goes out the window. They changed it from making food for them so that it makes it easy for them when they're grieving to just feeding the Muslims in the masjid, getting the barakat. No, they changed it. You see, they changed it. Allah musta'an. So these are some points that I wanted to bring around this great hadith of Zayd bin Thabit or Abi Usama, the two of the companions, Usama bin Zayd, Zayd bin Harith, because I made some mistake in the dars last week, and there's more benefit I wanted to bring. So we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala for his help, for his mercy. We ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to increase us in Iman. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to enter mercy to our hearts. Thereby we will be able to earn his mercy in this life and thereafter. We ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to send salutations upon our blessed noble Prophet ila yawma yubathun, to the day of judgment, wa ala ashabihi jami'an, upon all of his companions and his his azwaj, his tayyibat, his blessed and virtuous wives, wa man taba sunnatahu ila yawmuddin, and all of those who follow his way to the best of their ability until the day of judgment. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبد الله ورسوله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا هو أستغفره وأتوب إليه وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything of good I stated this from the guidance and the favor of Allah, and any mistakes from myself as a human or the shaitan. Allah bereavement, and Allah is free from them both. Walhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Abu Dawud is what? Finish. Button.